Imagine an endless, barren expanse of desert. Suddenly, in the sweltering heat, a giant glass structure pierces the horizon. This isn't science fiction. This is a real $500 billion megaproject currently being built by Saudi Arabia. They call it a wonder of the future world. But behind the stunning 3D renders lies a shocking reality they are hiding. Led by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, this colossal project known as NEOM promises to change human history forever. The centerpiece of this project is The Line, a straight-line city 170 kilometers long, encased in 500-meter-tall giant mirrors. No roads, no cars, zero carbon emissions. A technological utopia where everything you need is just a 5-minute walk away.
Sounds perfect, right? But experts and scientists around the world are starting to sound the alarm. The scale of this project is absolutely insane. Why would an oil-rich nation suddenly invest $500 billion into a city that has never existed before? And what does this giant glass wall actually hide? Is it an ecological revolution or the world's largest technological surveillance prison? Today, we will uncover the dark secrets and ambitions behind the most controversial city in human history. Brace yourself. To understand why Saudi Arabia is building this insane city, we have to step back and look at their sole lifeline: oil. For decades, oil provided unimaginable wealth, but the world is changing fast, and the era of fossil fuels is slowly coming to an end.
Saudi leaders realized a terrifying truth. If they don't transform immediately, their economy will collapse in the coming decades. Thus, a plan called Vision 2030 was born, a highly aggressive strategy to wean the country off its dependence on oil. NEOM is the crown jewel of that vision. Its location on the coast of the Red Sea wasn't chosen at random. Nearly 13% of global trade passes through these waters every single day. It is an absolutely perfect strategic position. Saudi Arabia wants to turn this region into a new hub for global innovation and trade, rivaling Dubai. However, building a high-tech paradise in one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on Earth brings massive challenges, unprecedented engineering challenges. And nature, it seems, won't let this project stand without a fight.
To build the line, engineers face monumental problems that have never been solved before in human history. Let's start with the most obvious feature: the 500-meter-tall mirrored glass walls enclosing the entire city. This structure is taller than the Empire State Building, and it stretches across the desert for 170 kilometers. But putting a gigantic mirror in the middle of a blazing desert creates a terrifying side effect. It essentially acts as a massive solar reflector, threatening to fry the surrounding environment and drastically alter the local microclimate. And what happens to the millions of migratory birds that pass through this exact region every single year? Experts warn that this invisible barrier could become the largest ecological death trap ever built by mankind. Then there is the problem of water. How do you hydrate 9 million people in a barren wasteland? Saudi Arabia already relies heavily on desalination, a highly industrial process that strips salt away from seawater. But powering enough plants for a megacity of this scale requires an ungodly, unimaginable amount of energy. They promise the city will be 100% renewable, powered entirely by massive solar and wind farms. However, the battery technology required to store that massive amount of energy for nighttime use doesn't fully exist yet. And then there's the food. You cannot farm in the sand. NEOM's solution: massive, multi-level vertical farming driven entirely by artificial intelligence. Millions of tons of genetically optimized food grown indoors, completely detached from the natural world. But what happens if the system fails? What happens if a glitch shuts down the water pumps or the artificial suns? In a tightly sealed linear city, completely isolated in the desert, a single system failure could mean an immediate catastrophe. Logistics present another nightmare. How do you move 9 million people efficiently along a single straight line? They claim a revolutionary high-speed train will get you from one end to the other in just 20 minutes.
But mathematicians and transit experts have run the numbers, and the reality tells a very different story. If a station is placed every few kilometers to accommodate the population, the train will physically never have enough time to reach its top speed. Which means commuting in this so-called utopia could actually be much worse than in modern cities today. Almost every single promise they make seems to defy the fundamental laws of physics, logistics, and economics. Yet, the massive digging continues, because the real goal of NEOM might not just be about building a city at all.
But to build a utopian future from scratch, you first have to erase what was already there. And this is the darkest secret of NEOM. The Saudi government claims this region was an empty, untouched canvas, a blank slate waiting for civilization. That is a lie. For centuries, this exact land has been home to the Huayta tribe, a proud, indigenous Bedouin community with deep roots in the desert. When the blueprints for the line were finalized, these people were not invited to the future. They were simply told to leave. What followed was a brutal campaign of forced evictions. Entire villages were wiped off the map by heavily armed security forces. Those who dared to protest, who refused to give up their ancestral homes for a mirrored glass wall, faced terrifying consequences. Human rights organizations report arrests, disappearances, and even death sentences. A high-tech paradise built on a foundation of human tragedy. The blood on the sand was quickly paved over. But the moral cost isn't the only thing spiraling completely out of control.
Let's talk about the money. The official price tag for NEOM is a staggering $500 billion. However, independent financial analysts and engineers are laughing at that number. To build what they promised, the true cost is closer to $1.5 trillion. Even for one of the richest oil nations on Earth, draining that much liquid cash is a massive, economy-threatening gamble. Recently, reality hit hard. Reports leaked that Saudi Arabia drastically scaled back the project. By 2030, they might only complete just 2.4 kilometers of the promised 170. With budgets ballooning and timelines collapsing, why push forward? Why continue pouring billions into the sand? Because the line isn't just a real estate project. It is an unprecedented experiment in absolute control. NEOM is officially branded as a cognitive city. It goes far beyond the concept of a smart city. Every single action, every movement, every heartbeat of its 9 million residents will be monitored by an all-seeing artificial intelligence. Through millions of cameras and biometric sensors, the city will know what you need before you even realize you need it. It promises ultimate convenience, but convenience is just the friendly mask worn by total surveillance.
In a country with a strict authoritarian government, a city that collects 90% of your daily data is a terrifying weapon. If the AI controls your water, your food, your transit, and your living space, what happens if you disagree with the people in charge? You can't just drive away. There are no cars. There are no roads out. You are entirely trapped inside the machine. Furthermore, this data is worth more than oil. The behavior patterns of millions will be harvested, analyzed, and potentially sold. The project is practically a golden cage, a 5-star luxury prison completely devoid of privacy or true freedom. This is the ultimate trade-off of the 21st century. Give up your fundamental human rights and we will give you a sci-fi utopia. Yet, despite the glaring red flags, international corporations and politicians continue to invest billions into this fantasy. They are blinded by the sheer scale of the ambition, ignoring the cracks that are already forming in the foundation.
What happens when the reality of human nature clashes with a rigidly programmed artificial environment? Will it become the thriving capital of the new world? Or is it destined to become the most expensive ghost town ever built? A monument to human hubris, rotting silently under the unforgiving Arabian sun. But to answer that, we have to look at the history of other megalomaniac projects that promised to change the world and failed.
History is littered with the ruins of utopian dreams, megaprojects that promised the future but delivered empty concrete shells. We only have to look at China. Over the past 2 decades, they built hundreds of massive urban centers to stimulate their economy. The result? Dozens of so-called ghost cities. Trillions of dollars locked away in silent, rotting infrastructure that nobody wants to live in. Economic experts fear that NEOM is heading down the exact same terrifying path, but on a much more catastrophic financial scale. If the line fails, it won't just hurt Saudi Arabia. The global financial system is deeply intertwined with Gulf wealth. Billions of dollars from international investors, tech giants, and global banks could evaporate into the desert air overnight.
To prevent this, the Saudi government has launched one of the most aggressive and expensive PR campaigns in human history. They are paying millions to influencers, celebrities, and media outlets to sell you a dream, to convince the world that the impossible is already happening. But the satellite images don't lie. Behind the smoke and mirrors, the progress is agonizingly slow, and the budget is bleeding out. This brings us to a terrifying global implication. Are we relying too much on hypothetical technology to save us? As the global climate crisis worsens, the ultra-rich seem to believe they can simply build a high-tech fortress to escape the consequences. An eco-friendly utopia for the billionaires, while the rest of the world burns. But as we have seen, nature always wins in the end.
For thousands of years, humans survived in the desert by adapting to it, by respecting its harsh, unyielding rules. But NEOM represents the ultimate peak of modern human hubris. The belief that with enough money and technology, we can conquer physics itself. It is a desperate gamble, a nation trying to buy a ticket to the future before their oil runs dry. But you cannot buy the laws of thermodynamics. You cannot bribe the desert, and you cannot hide a human rights disaster behind a giant mirror. 50 years from now, what will remain of the $500 billion city? Will it be the beacon of a new human civilization? Or will it be the most spectacular, expensive failure in the history of our species? Only time and the unforgiving Arabian sands will tell. But one thing is certain. The line is hiding a reality far darker than they want you to see. Thank you for watching. If you found this deep dive revealing, hit the like button and subscribe. What do you think? Will NEOM actually be finished, or is it a doomed experiment? Let us know in the comments below. See you in the next investigation.